Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So hello to all of our newly admitted Tritons for fall 2022. On behalf of the International Students and Programs Office, also known as ISPO, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are Zooming in from. We are here to welcome you. My name is Lisa Swit, and I am an International Student Advisor. And I am joined today by a few of my colleagues. We have Joe Peters and Emily Stewart, Grace Fuller, and Karina Ivanian, who are here to answer any questions that you might have that you could post in the Q&A or the chat. So a few housekeeping items before we begin today. So first of all, you are in listen only mode. So that means that you can hear us, but we are not able to hear you. And secondly, we are recording this webinar. So you will be able to view it later on at iwebinars.ucsd.edu. So in case you miss anything and need to go back to review it, don't worry, you'll be able to go to review this webinar in the next couple of days. And then lastly, you can use the Q&A feature to submit any questions. I have my colleagues here on the line to answer the questions that you might have. And then we should be able to get through this presentation relatively quickly, so we'll have plenty of time at the end to answer any questions that you have. But if for some reason there's too many questions for us to answer, don't worry, there are many ways that you can contact our office. You can contact us through Zoom advising or email, or you can visit us in person at the front desk. So if you don't get your questions answered today, fear not, there's plenty of ways to reach us. So today's session, we will be covering working in the United States, specifically for undergraduate students at UC San Diego. So we will be talking about employment eligibility for F1 and J1 students working on campus and off campus, and both during your academic program and after your academic program. And then we'll be sure to provide some resources that are related to employment eligibility and some tips for preparing for employment. And throughout the presentation today, I might ask some questions to help you stay engaged. So go ahead and locate the raise hand icon so you know what to push when I ask a question. And I see that a handful of you are raising your hand to show that you're here. So thank you so much to all of you for being here. Okay, so before you begin working in the United States, it is super important that you understand the W's of working as an international student. So before you start working, we want you to ask these questions. Who do you need authorization from? What kind of proof of authorization do you need? When are you trying to start working? Are you trying to work before your program ends or after your program ends? Where is it that you want to work? Do you want to work on campus or off campus? And then why are you going to benefit from this employment? How is it related to your field of study? Answering these questions are going to help you determine what kind of authorization you need and who you would be requesting that authorization from. And we'll be going into the specifics of the answers to these questions in this presentation today. So international students in F1 and J1 status are eligible for various types of employment while you're here in the United States. You might have employment authorization during your program, or you might have employment authorization after your program ends, or both, of course. But just know that the authorization process for whether you want to work before or after will be different. So if you want to work during your program, as an F1 student, you can work on campus. You might be interested in applying for curricular practical training, or you might be interested in doing a volunteer or unpaid internship. For J1 students, you might also be interested in working on campus. And if you're going to work off campus, you would need to apply for pre-completion academic training. If you're interested in working after your program ends, F1 students are eligible to apply for optional practical training, which would include on-campus employment, off-campus employment, volunteer and unpaid internships. And then for J1 students, If you want to work after your program, that would be post-completion academic training. And don't get too overwhelmed with these terms if these are brand new for you. We're going to go into each of these in detail so that you can become familiar with the specifics of each of these. But this is just to give you a very broad overview. So let's talk about the various types of work authorization. It's important that you make sure that you're authorized to work before you start any type of employment. Some types of employment actually don't require authorization and are considered incidental to your status, whereas some types of employment require authorization from our office, and then other types of employment are recommended by our office. So we might issue an I-20, but then you have to get authorization from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. So let's go into detail of these different types of employment. So if as an F1 or J1 student who's entered the United States, you are eligible to start working on campus. On-campus work is defined as work on the school premises, and you are being employed by the institution that issued your I-20. So that means that you're working for UC San Diego. This could be working at the library, it could be working at the dining hall, or working as a teaching assistant or researcher. So also this could be a type of employment that provides direct services to students. So what do you think? Is working at Starbucks at Price Center considered on-campus employment for international students? If you think that working at Starbucks at Price Center is on-campus employment, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, it looks like the majority of you are in agreement that working at Starbucks at Price Center is considered on-campus employment, and you are correct. So you do not need authorization to work on campus, and it does not need to be related to your field of study. You can work up to 20 hours during the academic year, but during summer breaks and holidays, you can work full-time. So you can work more than 20 hours a week if it is not while school is in session. So again, F1 students do not need authorization. It's considered incidental to your status. Sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier, but J1 students do need permission if you want to work on campus. If there's any J students in the audience here, you do need authorization to work on campus. And you would request that from ISPO. If you're going to get paid, you will need a social security number. And that is for tax purposes. We'll go into a little bit more detail about social security numbers later in the presentation. Okay, so on-campus employment, in order to work on campus, you need to be inside the United States. You need to be a currently enrolled student. So, you know, as long as you are enrolled, so look at the start date on your I-20, that is the earliest date that you can begin on-campus employment. You need to have an active CVIS record, and then you have to receive a job offer. Those are the requirements for working on campus. For J1 students, again, you also need to request a permission letter from ISPO. Working off campus. So F1 students in their academic program of study will generally request off-campus employment in the form of what is called curricular practical training. For J1 students, off-campus employment authorization during your program of study is called pre-completion academic training. Graduate students, undergraduate students can only work up to 20 hours during the academic year. Again, during breaks and holidays, you can work more than 20 hours. Okay, so let's look at working off campus through CPT. So in order to apply for curricular practical training, you will need to receive a job offer from an employer. Also, CPT is linked to a course or participation in a quarterly program. So each quarter that you're applying for CPT, you'll need to make sure that you're either enrolled in a course or you're receiving course credit to participate in CPT. So let's say that you find a great internship opportunity and they offer you a position that starts in October and it goes all the way through March. So since those dates overlap between fall and winter quarter, you'll need to submit a CPT application both in the fall quarter as well as in the winter quarter. Additionally, you'll need to hold an active SEVIS record. So that means that you have entered the United States. And then, of course, the work does need to be related to your field of study. And you need to have met the 1 academic year requirement. That means that you have been enrolled full-time for at least 3 quarters on the same SEVIS number in active status. And CPT is authorized by ISPO. So our processing time is 10 to 15 business days. So let's say you receive a job offer, you can go ahead and submit the request to our office, and then you should have employment authorization to work off campus within 2 to 3 weeks. So let's talk a little bit more about meeting the 1 academic year requirement. So most students tend to arrive in the fall quarter, and that is when we activate your SEVIS record. So you're eligible to work on campus for fall quarter, you can work on campus for winter quarter, and you can work on campus for spring quarter. And then starting in summer of 2023, you would be eligible to work off campus using curricular practical training. So your first quarter, second quarter, and third quarter, if fall quarter is your first quarter of study, you're not eligible to use CPT. You're not able to work off campus until you've met the 1 academic year requirement. If you studied at a different institution and you transferred your SEVIS record to UC San Diego, or perhaps you've been inside the United States with a different immigration status, and then you did a change of status to F1, or you changed your academic level. Perhaps you were here as a high school student, and then now you're in your undergrad program. You might have already accrued time towards the 1 year academic requirement. So if any of those scenarios apply to you, you might be eligible for CPT as early as this quarter. For J1 students applying for pre-completion academic training, you would have the same requirements as F1 students applying for CPT, except the only difference is that instead of needing to enroll for 1 academic year, you only need to be enrolled for 1 academic quarter on the same SEVIS number. And just like CPT, academic training is authorized through ISPO. So again, our processing time is 10 to 15 business days. So once you receive that job offer, submit your request to us, and you would have employment authorization in 2 to 3 weeks. So we would process an I-20 or a DS-2019 to show your employment authorization. So on your I-20, there's a section called employment information, and we would input the information about CPT. And then if you're a J1 student on your DS-2019, we would input the academic training information. And that is how you receive your employment authorization. Okay, we have a very quick video I'd love to show you.
I guess I can take random jobs like babysitting or driving Uber, since they're not real jobs anyways.
Okay, so just a few of you raised your hand. Oops. So if you want to work off campus, you need to have employment authorization in the form of curricular practical training if you're an F1 student, or academic training if you're a J1 student. And it needs to relate to your field of study. So working for Uber or babysitting, those would not be options for you since they're off campus. And most likely not related to your field of study. I mean, perhaps they could be, but we would encourage you to come talk to our office if you think that they are related to your field of study. And then you need to be enrolled in a course for both curricular practical training and pre-completion academic training. Okay, so I want to talk about OPT eligibility. OPT is something that students typically apply for after they graduate. You need to be inside the United States in order to apply for OPT. There is a 5-month window To apply for it, you can apply 90 days before your program end date and as late as 60 days after. You do need to have an active CVIS record. So that means that you've been maintaining your status throughout your time at UC San Diego. And that means that you have met at least the 1-year academic requirement. And the work that you do needs to be related to your field of study. And when you apply for OPT, we would issue an I-20 that recommends OPT, but then you actually apply with USCIS. So unlike CPT, notice that you do not need a job offer in order to apply for OPT. Once you get the OPT authorized, you would report your employment. But in order to get your OPT authorized, you don't need a job offer as part of the application process. So again, you have a 5-month application window. So imagine it's your final quarter. After you graduate, you have a 60-day grace period, but you can apply for OPT 90 days before your program end date and as late as 60 days after. So just to give you kind of that broad overview, you have a 5-month application window to apply for OPT. We recommend that you apply early when you apply for OPT because it takes USCIS around 90 days to process your application. So we encourage you to visit opt.ucsd.edu to learn more information about the application process. And then this probably won't affect you as an undergrad, but 365 days of full-time CPT would impact your eligibility for OPT. You can apply for CPT part-time, there's no limit to that. But if you were to do 1 full year of full-time CPT, you might not be eligible for OPT after that. And then if you are a STEM major, you would likely be able to apply for a 24-month extension. So that means you could get up to 3 years of employment as an F1 student if you're a STEM major. For J1 students, it's very important to understand that you have to apply for post-completion academic training before your program end date. So that's a little bit different than F1 students. F1 students have that extra 60 days after the program end date to apply for OPT, whereas J1 students need to submit the application before their program ends. And unlike F1 students, J1 students, the academic training is authorized by ISPO. And again, the work does need to be related to your program of study. You need to have an active CVIS record and have been maintaining your status while inside the United States. And academic training can be authorized for the same length of your program, but no more than 18 months, whichever is shorter. So for example, if your program is 9 months, then you could receive 9 months of academic training. If your program is 24 months, you could receive 18 months of academic training. So it just kind of depends on the duration of your program. Okay, we have another fun video. Let's see.
Now that I have a social security card, I can work anywhere, anytime.
Okay, what do you all think? Do you think that having a social security number gives you authorization to work in the United States? So the majority of you did not raise your hand, so that's good. A social security number is something that's assigned to you by the government that's really meant for tax reporting purposes. If you are planning to get paid, you will need that social security number in order to get paid, but it doesn't give you any authorization. In order to apply for the social security number, you would have to have a job offer letter and you would request a support letter from ISPO. And then important to note, if you have a social security number already, or once you apply for one, it's a number that that is permanent. So it's not something that you apply for multiple times. Once you have a social security number, that's yours to keep and it's unique to you. So just a brief overview of your timeline once more to kind of wrap up the employment options that you have during your journey at UC San Diego. If you arrive to campus during fall quarter, You can work on campus, fall quarter, winter quarter, spring quarter. Starting in the summer, you can apply for off-campus work authorization in the form of CPT. And then after you graduate, if you have only a one-year program, if you have a very short program, which is unlikely for any of you on the call, you would then apply for post-completion OPT, which gives you a minimum of 12 months and a maximum of 36 months if you're a STEM major. And then, for J1 students, it's slightly different. J1 students, you can work on campus for fall quarter. You can potentially start working off campus starting already in the winter quarter using pre-completion academic training and then post-completion academic training after you graduate. So when it comes time for you to begin your employment search, just know that there are a lot of resources and support services that are available to you at UC San Diego. The Career Center is a great resource. This is a great place to start. There are some advisors, potentially within your department even, who might be able to help you find positions that are directly related to your field of study. So definitely check in with your department in college. And then check in, the Career Center. I want to give them a plug again. They can help you with your resume, the cover letters, virtual interviews, helping you to find different internships. They also host resource fairs and networking events, and they have amazing job search tools. So we highly recommend that you get familiar with their services at the beginning of your program of study, not at the end. That way you can take advantage of everything that they have to offer. And then I'm sure you're all familiar with our iPortal. This is where you requested your I-20 or DS 2019. So this is the same place that you will use when you want to apply for a Social Security number support letter, or you want to apply for CPT authorization or academic training, or the recommendation for OPT. And now I'd love to open it up to any questions that you have. I know that we covered a lot of information. If anything was unclear, feel free to post your question in the chat. And me, Emily, or Joe, or Grace or Karina will be here to answer any questions you have. Emily or Grace or Joe or Karina, do you see any common questions that are coming through that you'd like to address?
Yeah, I saved a couple that I thought everyone could benefit from. So we got some good questions. One of them was, if we get a job offer for something we are minoring in, does that count as a job offer in the field of study?
Do you want to take a stab at that one, Emily?
Yeah, so as Lisa mentioned, for CPT or OPT or academic training, the job must be related to your major field of study. So it can't be related to your minor alone, but if it's related to your minor and your major, then that should be okay. And sometimes, minors and majors are similar, right? Sometimes we have students maybe majoring in biology and minoring in another, like, science, so you could have a job that's maybe that combines both of those, but again, it should at least be related to your major. Okay, another question, do we need to get a Social Security number before we apply to on-campus jobs?
So no, you don't need a Social Security number to apply for a job, but if you're planning to get paid, you'll definitely need that Social Security number.
Thank you, Lisa. Someone wants to know if you could go back to the employment timeline slide.
This one?
Yeah, so I don't know if that person wants to type in another question, or maybe you could give another overview of that, Lisa.
Yeah, so if you're starting your program of study this fall, take a look at the start date on your I-20. Whatever the start date is on your I-20, that's when you can begin working on campus, unless you're a transfer student or a change of level or a change of status student. If none of that rings a bell, then that doesn't apply to you. You'll definitely know if you're a transfer or a change of status. But in general, the majority of students can work on campus fall quarter, winter quarter, spring quarter without authorization. If you're an F1 status, you can work off campus starting in summer. And then after you graduate, you can apply for post-completion OPT. That applies to F1 students. For J1 students, you can work on campus starting in the fall, off campus starting in winter, using pre-completion academic training, and then post-completion academic training after you graduate.
Great, thank you. So whoever asked that, if you have more questions, feel free to put it in the Q&A. And then there was a follow-up question related to the minor question. So it says, adding on to the question that was just asked about minors, if you double major and a job only is related to one of those majors, is that fine?
I think so, right, Emily?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be related to both. Just one.
Right.
Yeah. Could be, again, it could be, but it doesn't have to be. Let's see. Okay. Oh, okay. We'll just reiterate the answer to, do we need to get an SSM before we apply to on-campus jobs? And the answer is no, and you really can't until you get a job offer. So that one.
Okay, so there's a question of, would working at the UCSD Medical Center count as working on or off campus? So the UCSD Medical Center, my understanding is that is on campus, so you would not need authorization for that.
Yeah, I think, if you're getting paid by UCSD, it should be on campus. And then Grace put a couple of things in the chat that I can just mention. So there is a session next week with ISPO and the Career Center on Thursday, September 15th at 3 p.m. Pacific time. It's actually going to be a hybrid session, so you can come in person or via Zoom. So that would be a great session to learn about the many different resources the Career Center has. They're a great place to start for on-campus or off-campus work. And again, I'll be there as well as some other ISPO advisors. And then we do have a couple LinkedIn, there's a page, an ISPO page, as well as the International Student Alumni groups. You can see those links in the chat. And then of course we have our Instagram where we post different updates. And then our main employment site is iwork.ucsd.edu. So many, Grace put so many links in the chat here.
Super helpful.
Some more information about how to find jobs via Handshake. And then about the Career Center, there are a couple advisors there specifically for international students. So you can take a look at those links as well. Thank you, Grace. Any other questions?
Okay, so we have a few more slides to kind of wrap up. And if any questions come up, just keep the questions coming. But we wanted to invite you to get engaged with our meetup groups. You can go to iorientationucsd.com/meetup if you're interested in meeting other students from your region or other students that have similar interests as you. So perhaps you're interested in board games or nature or photography, or a certain region of the world. This is a great way to connect and meet new students. And all of those meetups are also posted on our calendar of events. I would recommend that you bookmark this page because this is a great resource to see what's happening in the weeks ahead. There is so much going on all the time at UC San Diego, and this is just like, you can go here and you can see what's happening. If you're like, oh, wow, look, there's a snorkeling trip, or there's one of the meetup groups. This is a great resource. So bookmark it and see what's happening in the upcoming weeks. And then some final reminders, go ahead and go to iorientationucsd.com to register for other sessions. Visit iupdates.ucsd.edu for the most up-to-date information in terms of regulations. And then our weekly newsletter, inews.ucsd.edu, that should be sent to your UCSD email account. So make sure that you do read those emails. There's usually very important information in there. And you're always welcome to visit us at our Zoom advising hours if you have any questions that come up. And then follow us on social media. We're active on there as well. So we have many different avenues and ways to connect. We want to hear from you. We want to meet you. So definitely jump online, come see us in person. We have some coffee hours happening next week. So we hope that we'll see you there. And I don't know if there's any questions that came through. So far, no more questions. But also, we wanted you to take a moment to scan the QR code that's on the screen. If you could take this survey, this is how we'll verify your attendance at the workshop. And then you'll also receive a post-session email tomorrow with the survey link reminding you to fill it out. If you have any questions, you're welcome to email us at iprograms.ucsd.edu. But we're always looking for feedback so that we can improve our services. So we do want to hear from you. Okay, I see that we do have time for more questions. So I see there's a couple more that have come in. So a question that someone asked is, if I were to apply for an internship that requires U.S. work authorization, does that mean I need SSN, or does my F1 status qualify me for that? So if your internship says that you need work authorization, you do have the option to apply for work authorization as an F1 student. So it depends if your internship is on campus or off campus. If your internship is on campus, your I-20, that's enough to show that you have work authorization inside the United States. If you want to work off campus, then you need to apply for curricular practical training, which you're not eligible for until you've met the 1-year academic requirement, unless you're a transfer student, change of status or change of level student. And then the Social Security number, you only need that in order to get paid. So it depends if the internship is volunteer or paid. So the Social Security number is not work authorization. The Social Security number is something for tax purposes. It's for you to get paid. It's not work authorization. Someone asked, I can't find the SSN document on my iPortal. How do I request for one? So when you log into iPortal, there's a tab there that says services. And then there's a section for newly admitted students and then current students. If you go to current students, there should be a letter request called Social Security Support Letter. And at that request, it's going to ask you for a job offer letter. So make sure you have a job offer letter before you apply for the Social Security number support letter.
And just to be clear, the service itself is just called letter request, but then within it, once you submit it, it'll be called the Social Security letter request.
And maybe someone can provide the link for information about SSN. And then someone asked, do we need authorization from ISPO as J1s before applying for on-campus job or after we get the job offer? So you would need to apply for work authorization after you get the job offer. So in order to get authorization, first you need the job offer. In order to apply for the Social Security number, you do need a support letter from ISPO in addition to a job offer letter. Okay, so another student asked, they are a J1 student planning to apply for an internship that starts after the program finishes, and the employer asks if they need sponsorship or should they say no in that case. So you do not need sponsorship. Your J1 status gives you authorization to work using academic training. However, depending on the duration of your program of study, if you want to work longer than your academic training provides you, then you might need to ask for sponsorship, and then you might have to depart and re-enter on a different visa status. But initially, depending on the duration of your program, you should be able to start working with your J1 academic training.
So there's a question about the bookstore by the old student center, if it's considered independent, or can they work at that one too, or the only one by the Price Center? I've never heard that it's not part of UCSD. Do you know? So I think it would still be considered on campus, but you could always ask, like, where does the paycheck come from? And I'm pretty sure it'll still be UCSD, in which case it would be on campus. But do you happen to know, Lisa?
I think as long as it's providing direct services to students, you should be good. We'll stay online for a few more minutes in case there's any further questions. Thank you so much for attending today's session. Again, whether you're joining us from inside the United States or you're still outside and you're packing your bags and getting ready to enter, we hope that you enjoy the rest of your summer and that you have a great fall quarter and that you're off to a great start. We look forward to meeting you, hopefully in person sometime soon. Well, again, we'll stay online for a few more minutes, but again, thank you for joining us. And someone asked, where can I find jobs on campus? I would recommend visiting the Career Center. They can definitely point you in the direction of what jobs might match your interests and your skill set. So don't be shy, go visit them because they can be really, really helpful with kind of directing you and guiding you on your career path. And someone asked, since I have a job offer letter, can I already request a letter from ISPO now, or do I have to wait until I enter the United States? If you have a job offer, you can go ahead and request it in iPortal since it's all electronic. You don't need to wait to enter the United States. I love all these questions that are coming in. Okay, how do I submit a Social Security number application? Sorry, I missed that. If you go to the chat, Grace actually provided a link to on our website that gives you all of the information about applying for a Social Security number, because you'll need the support letter from our office together with the job offer letter, and then you'll have to go to the Social Security Administration office to apply for that. All right, any last final questions? We are here to answer. And if you have questions that come up, if you think of something later tonight or this weekend, you can always reach out to us by Zoom. You can visit us in person. You can send us an email. You can come to coffee hour. So we are very accessible. We definitely want to hear from you. So I know that sometimes if you don't have a question right now, you might have one after your program starts. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. All right, if there's no further questions, we hope you have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you might be. We look forward to seeing you in the fall. Take care. Bye, everyone.